So just to be clear, the question you asked is you just wanted to know when setting up your business, like what's the right business structure, what's the next steps, what's the best way to do it as an independent artist.
Setting up business, getting that foundation, that very, very foundation down. So yes, that is my question.
Awesome. Well, I will get started. So one, right, the most important thing I think most people need to understand is like, why do I set up a business? Right? Why can't I just put my stuff on TuneCore, have the money hit my PayPal, and just kind of wing it, which is what a lot of people do. I did it for years, and most of us do it just because we don't know any better. And the two main reasons you want to set up a business is you want to take care of tax advantages. So we've talked about this before, but basically, if you have a company, you get taxed last, meaning you get 100% of the money up front, you spend the money, and whatever's left is what you get taxed on. When you're an individual, you get taxed first, meaning before your money is yours, the government takes its taxes from the gross amount. And so if you get lucky without a business set up and get $1 million from a record from sales and streams, or a brand comes along and writes you a big check in your name, you get taxed at the highest possible tax bracket, which gets up there very quickly. So tax advantages are number one. And then number two is to protect you personally from lawsuits tied to your works. And in the music business, lawsuits are a thing. It's not you don't have to do anything wrong. You don't have to be malicious. You could just, you could get a track from a producer, not know that they did something wrong, and you could get caught up in a lawsuit. And you never want your personal assets and your personal life to be tied up in a lawsuit. So with a business, it just gives you a layer of protection in the event that you ever get sued. No one can come after your condo or your house or your car personally, because there's a line between your life as a person and your life as an artist or your business. So those are really the two primary reasons someone would set up a business. Any questions?
No, it's all making sense. I definitely don't want to be personally sued.
No. Cool. So then the types of businesses, and this is for the US. So sole proprietorship, partnership, limited partnership, corporation, LLC, nonprofit, and co-op. So most people have probably heard of like a corporation, S corp or C corp, or an LLC. In the music business, for the most part, you're either going to be a corporation or an LLC. There are a few co-ops and stuff that I've heard about, but again, to keep it simple, if you're an independent artist operating on your own, growing your career, with potentially having income streams outside of music, like you said, modeling or fashion, then you're more than likely going to set up either a corporation or an LLC.
Got it.
And we're going to go through the decisions you would make as to whether you set up a corporation or an LLC. So this chart right here, pretty much, and I'll send you this as well, as always. This chart right here pretty much asks you questions, and then based on your answers, gives you a suggestion. Now, I'm by no means a lawyer. Like, I can't legally tell you what to set up. It's not my area. Although we have set up dozens of companies. But this is like a pretty straightforward way to look at, like, why would I have a sole proprietorship? Why would I have an LLC? Why would I have a corporation? So are you okay being personally liable for business debts and lawsuits?
No.
No. All right. So once you say no, we're going to just follow this here. And then the next question would be, do you plan on raising capital or issuing stock? So basically, do you plan on having investors in your company at any point in time?
As of right now, no.
No. Okay. Do you already have a plan to hire employees? Like in your, call it next 6 to 12 months, do you see yourself having anyone on salary?
No.
No. Right. And then are you starting your business alone or with partners?
Alone.
Alone. So that right there means you should probably set up an LLC. It's the simplest way to go. And for the most part, most independent artists I speak to are setting up an LLC. The biggest difference would be if an artist is like, I'm setting up a company because someone's investing in me. And I have had that be a situation. And in that case, you want to set up a corporation because a corporation handles issuing of stocks different than an LLC as far as control, ownership, and taxes.
Okay.
So because you answered the questions you answered, for the most part, most artists will be in your belt where an LLC will pretty much handle everything you needed to do.
Got
So
it.
now that we know you got to set up an LLC, the next steps would be, what do you do? So to set up your business, there's two documents that you'll end up with that pretty much show you're in business. You'll have a state business certificate, or three documents, sorry. You'll have an operating agreement, and then you'll have an EIN, which is an employer identification number. Your EIN is like your business's social security number, basically.
Okay.
Right. So to get those three documents, uh, for a lot of people, if you don't have a lawyer in your family, if you're not a lawyer yourself, if you're not comfortable doing it yourself at your first time, you can go to like a LegalZoom or Rocket Lawyer, and they pretty much for like a flat fee will set up your LLC for you. And they'll ask you a bunch of questions. They'll ask you where you live, your phone number, the purpose of the business, the industry, the name of the business, the state you're going to operate in, and then they'll do all the back end paperwork with the state, and they'll supply you with the business certificate,
Okay.
a state document that says this person, this business is registered to operate in our state.
So when you are at the stage, whether, I mean, regardless if you're getting somebody's help or if you're doing LegalZoom or Rocket Lawyer, as far as like um name goes, is there a process where they say, hey, sorry, this is taken, or okay, so is okay, got it. Because I'm thinking I've been wanting to do this for a couple weeks now, almost a couple months now since we've talked. Of some things that I was thinking about. So I started thinking, okay, what names would I want? Um, and so the biggest question was, I mean, we are in America. Everybody and their grandmother that at least I know of has an LLC. So, what if the name that I want is taken?
So there's a couple ways they look at it. So one, it's by state, ironically. So like,
Really?
yeah, so when you register your name, they look up the state database to see if that name exists in the state that you're operating in. So if you do one in the state of Virginia, then they look through the Virginia database and say there's no business by the name of that in this state.
Oh, wow. Okay. I thought it would be
Like no, so that's where
national.
like trademarks and copyrights come into place. Because if
Got
you file a trademark or you file a copyright, then the branding, right, whether it's the name use or the logo use, is federally protected.
got it.
But if you just register your business, right, so you could register Liesl's Burgers in the state of Virginia, and I could register Liesl's Burgers in the state of Georgia, and you'll have Liesl's Burgers and I'll have Liesl Burger. Now, if you file a use trademark and you have a branding for it,
Mm-hmm.
and I go to file for Liesl's Burgers, you can sue me based on the grounds of the trademark.
And
I,
not on the
I
grounds of the LLC name.
correct.
Got it. So I'm sure, so this is probably done for the simple fact of one, everybody there's a lot of names that are the same. There's a lot of things. There's so many words in the Webster dictionary in general that people could, use. So differentiating someone that's really doing something serious as far as the business and going as far as trademarking things, or someone that's just setting up something. Um, is that?
Correct. And even when you trademark within industries. So
Oh,
like
wow.
when I was running track, and we did a deal with a shoe company, and the shoe company was like, "Oh, is your name trademark just in case?" And I was like, "Oh, I never thought about that." I went to trademark my name, and my name had already been trademarked for the use of clothing. So I can't trademark my name for clothing. It also had been trademarked for entertainment, because it was a media company named Udo. So there's a company called Udo that does clothing. There's a company called Udo that does media, and there's a company that's called Udo that does like the screen printing like machines. So I can't trademark my name in those three areas. I could probably trademark my name in like food or in like something, other than that. But like I can't trademark it in those industries. So even when you go to trademark like Liesl's Burgers, you can't trademark Liesl's Burgers for food and restaurants and fast food and then claim it as a musician.
Because it has to be basically checked under the category of music.
Correct. So that's where like Apple was a computer company, then they expanded to phones and they expanded to music. And when Apple Music started, they actually got sued because the Beatles publishing company was called Apple Music. So they actually went to court because it was like, well, you can't name your company Apple Music because we're Apple Music. And that's why it was iTunes originally and not Apple Music. Because when they originally started their company and they were thinking, all right, we're going to have a music player, we'll call it Apple Music, they didn't have the rights to use the name Apple Music.
Got it. Wow. Okay.
So it's little things like that. But again, the chances of you, again, like if your name is something music or something music group or something like, it's going to be very rare that you're going to have that combination of names have someone else do it unless you pick a very common name like House, which don't do that like I did. It's a very common name. But yeah, so when you get to that point and you enter it in, they'll do a check. And that's so if you do it through LegalZoom or Rocket Lawyer, they'll check for you. When you do it through the state business website, so if you went yourself to your SBA, your state business administration website, which is a government agency to set up your business, there's a name check on most states. I haven't set up a business in Virginia, but in DC, Maryland, Delaware, and Georgia, where we've set up businesses, you can check names before registering.
And so that's like on like a state website type situation.
Yeah, it's every state in America has an SBA, State Business Administration, and that's who. Just like every state has an MVA, and you go to the MVA for a driver's license, you go to the SBA for your business license.
Got it.
And your business license is that certificate, just like your driver's license is really a certificate to show that you can drive. Your business license is a certificate to show that you're operating a business.
Okay.
Right. So once you go through LegalZoom or Rocket Lawyer, or you go through the SBA yourself, you'll end up with the state certificate. Once you get that piece of paper, you're officially a business. A lot of times you need to set up an operating agreement, even if it's just you, because the operating agreement is what protects you and the business in the case of a lawsuit. It establishes the rules that the business will operate with internally. What your financial year looks like, when you pay out dividends, when you do your taxes, who makes decisions, what happens if you die, what happens if you sell the company, like all of these things go into an operating agreement, because in that legal binding document is what any partner or any relationship you use can say, well, that's what you said.
Okay. So that is essentially just like, I mean, it makes sense. Operating an agreement is an agreement, just indicating how the operations are going to go. And
That's it.
So that I do see how important that is as well, especially like, God forbid if something does happen, if you are hitting something a certain amount of money, and then it's like, nobody knows where this is going to, or who's making the decision based on this. Is our operating agreements, can they be changed,
Absolutely.
amended in any way? Okay.
And that has to be in the operating agreement, what it takes to change the operating agreement.
Got it.
Okay. So when it's just you starting out with no investors, no partners, it's easy. It's like I make all the decisions. I can change it whenever I want. I'm cool. The second you add a partner, even if they're a minority partner, they've got to sign an operating agreement with you that gives you control. Because if not, legally, it doesn't matter if someone gave you $100 or $100,000. They could go to a court and say, well, I gave her $100,000 and I should have 10%. And they're going to say, what document says that? That's where you can pull out the operating agreement they signed and say, well, no, it says they get 1%. But if you don't have an operating agreement, it's your word against their word, then you're at the mercy of a judge. The second you go to bring on an investor or a partner or employees, like just having an operating agreement, it's like your internal set of rules.
Okay.
Cool. So again, when you go through LegalZoom and Rocket Lawyer, when you set up your business, usually they're check boxes when you're setting it up, and they'll say, what do you need? Do you just need a certificate? Do you need this? Do you need that? One of those things that I know you can check is an operating agreement template. And then you basically answer a bunch of questions, and based on how you answer the questions, they'll create the operating agreement for you. So they'll say, is it just you or is it you and partners? And you say, just me. And they'll say, when you make a decision, like da da da. And when you go to hire someone, like, and when you answer these 10, 15 questions, they'll create the operating agreement. And the beauty with LegalZoom or Rocket Lawyer is, let's say you do add a partner on. Let's say you bring on like a manager and you're like, I'll give you equity in my company. You can go back to LegalZoom or Rocket Lawyer or whoever you worked with and answer new questions and get a new operating agreement set up. So if you don't have a lawyer in the family or a lawyer you trust, then these companies, that's what they do. But if you have a lawyer, then your lawyer can also help ask questions and create an operating agreement for you.
Okay.
Cool?
Yes.
Awesome. So that's step one. And step two, you need to get your EIN. So again, your EIN is like your business's social security number, your employer identification number. If you go through Rocket Lawyer or LegalZoom, one of those check boxes that you can add when you're getting your business set up is, yes, I need an EIN. And then Rocket Lawyer or LegalZoom will also go and get you the EIN. If you go through your own company or your own lawyer or you do it yourself, then they would have to go through the IRS.gov. So again, when you think of an EIN, if your state business certificate is letting the state know that you're operating a business, the EIN is letting the federal government know that you're operating a business.
Do you need a state business certificate in order to get an EIN? Like, what is it that, do you have to have that LLC set up in order to receive? Well,
that's a good question. I have to find out if you have to have one. I don't know if you need to have one. I've never done it the other way. I've always gotten the LLC, then the EIN. Even when we lived in DC, because the IRS building is in the DC, it literally a walking distance across the street from each other. We'd walk to one building and set up the LLC, and then we'd walk across the street and we'd get the EIN, and we'd have both in the same day. And that was the advantage living in DC is you could, like, it's a city where the federal government and the state government are like one and the same.
Right.
Whereas like in Atlanta, like, you know, when we do it here, we get the LLC and then it takes a few days for us to get the EIN because again, the IRS is in DC. But I know like in the order I've always done it and how I've always been advised to do it is get the business set up and then get the EIN for the business afterwards. Okay. But I will find out if you have to, because I don't know. I'm guessing there's a reason someone would get an EIN without it, but I think you need the name. So I think you'd have to have the business set up because even on the form, you have to put the name.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking like, okay, I'm sure like IRS or just anybody would not like whoever is generating or providing the EINs are not just like, yeah, sure, like I can give you an EIN just off the bat. Yeah. That's why I was just kind of curious, is there some sort of, because I don't even think even identification is not going to do anything because you need an EIN for what? Like, you know, so would they need their certificate or like proof of what? Can they search it right after I set it up? Like how long, you know what I'm saying? Like, so yeah, that I would love to know what that's like as far as like what's needed.
Cool. And then the last step is, so once you have your business set up, with that, you'd have your business state certificate, you'd have your operating agreement, you now have your EIN from the IRS. Then you want to secure your name everywhere. So namecheck.com, NAMECHECK, I think it is a great resource to like look up a name and then see what's available on Twitter and Snapchat and GoDaddy and all that stuff. Obviously having the website is really important, right? That's your business home, and you can secure an email with your website. your social media, like Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat. And then as new social media arrives, always go and snatch up your name. So like,
Right.
second Clubhouse is like, oh, we're allowing people to have rooms. Go grab your name, even if you never use it, just because like you never want anyone else to like use your name. And then last but not least is you can also file trademarks through like LegalZoom, Rocket Lawyers. They're trademark attorneys. But that's to me more like if you do feel like your name is somewhat, I would say like anyone could grab it, and you want to avoid someone else using that name, then filing that trademark and the use in your industry will allow you to stop them. It doesn't stop them from using it. It just allows you to stop them if you do find out someone's using it.
Okay. And this could be, I mean, could you also, well, I mean, I don't know if there's necessarily a reason to do this. As far as just like let's say I am doing like an acting gig or whatever. And I want to get paid through like or do something with my LLC. Could I trademark it under that as,
Yeah.
or just entertainment in general as a umbrella?
Yep.
Got it.
Yep. You can trademark one under like an umbrella. You can trademark multiple, like Universal Music, Universal Film, Universal TV. Like they're all their own trademarks. Netflix Original. Those are two different trademarks. So like,
Mm.
you know,
Okay.
all of those. Right. So what's next? So once you have those three documents, right? You'll have your state government document, you have your operating agreement, you have your EIN. Now you can set up your bank account, right? You're a business, so the first thing you want to do is be able to A, make money, so receive money, and B, pay. So for most banks now, especially after the whole PPP like surge of everyone and their mama owning a business to get that bread, most businesses require you to have operating agreement in place. So if you set up a business tomorrow, uh, even if it's a template, you have to have an operating agreement. I know for like bigger banks, Bank of America, Chase, and all those banks. But again, it's always good to have one, even if it's just you. So
Okay.
when you go to set up your bank, you will take your state incorporation document, you will take your operating agreement, and you'll take your EIN document that you receive from the IRS, and your driver's license, and you can set up your bank account. And you'll set up a business bank account. If possible, set up a bank account that looks out for smaller businesses. So if you whatever state you're in, there's a federal credit union or a teachers credit union, some that has a business banking option, but it's a credit union. Those are really good to build relationships when you want to do loans and stuff like that in the future. If you travel a lot, though, if you know, like when we set up like our touring company, we even though we had our local business bank, when we set up our touring company, we set it up with Bank of America. And the reason that was is when on tour, if you ever needed petty cash, every city has a Bank of America ATM. So it made more sense for us where like one, we were getting paid cash and checks at shows, and two, we needed cash. So pretty much we could route in every city, where's a Bank of America for us to either make a deposit or take cash out. Whereas like our local DC bank was only in DC.
Mm.
We didn't want to be on the road for 30 something days. And some of these shows you're making 10 plus $1,000. Like you don't want to be driving around with that much cash. So you get paid that city, you could be like, all right, tomorrow morning before we hit the road, let's go to the bank and make this deposit.
Okay.
Cool. So just something to think about. But again, I would always say, even if you have a Bank of America or a bigger bank, I would still build a relationship with a smaller bank.
Set up two accounts.
Yep.
Okay.
And I'll show you how that works in a little bit. Because this is where, so connecting the dots. So with your new business and your new bank account, you now can set up PayPal, Stripe, Square to collect payments. You also can set up your aggregator account, your TuneCore DistroKid to pay into your bank account through PayPal. And then you can also establish business lines of credit or get business credit cards to use to build your business. So the reason I would get multiple bank accounts potentially is, let's say I wanted, for just like clarity's sake, all of my streaming money to go into one account. And the only thing that ever touches that account is streaming. Because if I have to pay out producers or co-writers or collaborators, I'm not trying to figure out like whether that coffee or this expense is
Mm,
tied to. So sometimes it's cleaner and easier if I'm like, all right, so for my local bank account, I might have most of my business running through that. But for maybe my bigger bank account, I might just do my streaming. Or like in our case, I might put my streaming and licensing and all that into like my local bank account, but all my touring revenue and expenses goes through my Bank of America account. That way I'm not trying to do math. It's just like the money in there only goes to one thing.
okay.
So if you have, if you're like, you know what, I am going to do like a Chase or a Bank of America, a bigger bank, because I travel a lot with my acting and my modeling and all that, but I do want to build a relationship with this credit union in my state, then I would say, as you set up your business and you set up your PayPal and your Stripe and your Square and your TuneCore and your BMI and all these ways you make money, you could say, well, these funds will go to this account and these funds will go to this account.
Got it.
And if you're setting up multiple accounts, for most small businesses now, they have like no charge accounts. So, set up an account where like you're not getting paid charged $10, $15 a month to keep the account.
Okay. Okay.
Right. And then this goes into this. So like one of the things that you want to potentially look into, and you alluded to it earlier when you said just like entertainment company, is I always tell artists, indie artists in particular, like set up your first company as if it's your parent company, as if it's the entertainment group. And
And
maybe all of your money may go through that account for the first few years. But what you may want to do in the future is you may want to set up additional LLCs or corporations for each individual way you make money, because you may have partners or investors in different elements of your businesses that don't need to touch other things. So you may set up a publishing company and you may partner with an investor to get that off the ground. But you may not want that person to make any money from your touring.
mm,
So your parent company is here. You'd set up a sub company that's your publishing company that would have its own state certificate, its own operating agreement with your partner, its own EIN, its own bank accounts.
so, like you were talking about names and securing that, let's say that is something you're going to be looking at in the future, as far as, initially having a parent company and then having sub companies. Um, with a name and you trademarking that, are you able to utilize that in a way of adding then so and so touring or like whatever you want to add to it, the touring sub company, including the parent company's name? But like, what if that's gone? Like, do you see what I'm saying? Like, do you
Try to
um
come up with a different name.
got it? Okay.
So it's like if it's You Do Gray Entertainment is my parent company, but You Do Touring isn't available, then it might be Gray Touring,
Okay.
right? So it's like that. You'll see that all the time and there are people who literally just look at the trademark filings to see if celebrities are filing trademarks. They'll be like, oh, like Jay-Z just trademarked Blue. That must be the child of his daughter. Like people knew he was naming his daughter Blue before they announced it because he trademarked the name Blue Ivy.
Mm.
Or filed for it. I don't know if they got it or not. So again, like do everything with your parent company. Even when you go to file for trademarks, you have a limited amount of time to have a trademark without use, right?
Mm.
So you can file for like pending use. I'm going to use this, and then if the time lapses and you never use it, you have to refile or you lose the trademark. So like I wouldn't advise you today to secure all these names under a trademark, because it's a waste of money. It costs money to do that. I would say again, if the parent company is like your thing, come up with that name, secure it, trademark it. Um, and then you may never add a merch division or a touring company or a publishing company. It may just always run through one company. Again, the reasons you would add additional companies is for the same reasons I said above, but it's more on the security side, right? Like if I have 100+ songs making me $100,000 a month, and I have, a tour coming up, and I just got $1 million to go on tour, I don't want that recording money to mess up this touring gig, and I don't want this tour to mess up this recording money. So that's where I would set up 2 LLCs, because then, like, if someone were to sue me for one of these records because they said I stole their melody or their riff, I don't have to worry about them taking any of this $1 million that I've put in the bank to go on tour. And vice versa. If someone gets hurt at a show and I get sued, even though you have insurance, I don't want them to put a freeze on my recording money until they figure out the litigation. So that's where, again, you have multiple LLCs. And then again, the other reason is you may have someone who's like, oh man, I really want to invest in your music. And you may say, all right, well, your investment is in my music only, but not these other areas. That's where I would set up a different LLC, different bank account, because now we're doing a profit share on just the music.
Okay. So as far as starting out, it's best to have the parent company as a general entertainment or whatever. Because I did know you mentioned, we had a previous conversation, and you mentioned the publishing versus or like your royalties and stuff. So is this that situation, like as far as waiting, or do you suggest initially setting up those 2 LLCs?
I would set up one company, have it be like an entertainment group, and then you could do a DBA, a doing business as, which means it's still the same one company, but it's using 2 names. So you could have like, you do music or you do entertainment group be the parent company, and then I could file for a DBA, and you can do that again through Rocket Lawyer, LegalZoom, through the state website, and say, but I also do business as you do publishing. So you publishing is just a DBA, because again, in that first couple months, first year, you want to kind of see what the revenues are like before you spend all this money. Because the thing about businesses a lot of people don't know is you pay those registration fees, and you have to file for taxes for every business every year. So if in the first year you make a couple $1,000s, and 89% of that is coming from streaming, and the rest is coming from publishing, merch, and a couple shows, it's like, I don't know if you need 3 or 4 LLCs for $2,000,
Right.
because by the time you pay to file taxes, by the time you pay for your state registration renewal every year, like it isn't worth it. When you set it up and you start taking off and you're like, oh man, like, yo, we making pretty good money in these areas, that's when you can say, you know what, let's take that DBA and make that an LLC. So now, instead of this publishing company being the same company, I'm making enough now where I'm going to separate the publishing. Or, you know what, I'm getting a lot of money from shows, I need to separate that, because God forbid if something happened at one of these shows, I don't want that. Or I don't want someone to say I use one of their records, one of their beats without paying them, and they start going after my show money.
Okay.
So you create your threshold internally as far as like, at what point do you feel I need to start protecting these assets? Is it when you hit $1,000, $10,000, $100? Like, what's the number? And then just know that, again, there's a cost annually for every LLC that you have.
Okay.
Cool. And then finally, so I got a few tips. So pay taxes, right? I know it sounds like just something that everyone does, but I'll like honestly say, when we first ran our business, we didn't think about the taxes like that, because we didn't make a lot of money our first couple of years. So like the first 2 years, we didn't pay our taxes. We're just like, we don't have nothing left. Every dollar we make, we spend. So even though we made money, it was like we weren't sitting. And then when we finally filed taxes, even though we didn't have a lot of taxes due from the money that we had, the fees and penalties is what killed us, because they charge you daily for every day you don't pay your taxes or you don't file. So that's where I'm like, yo, like, find a good accountant, and like every year, even if it's 0, because it could be a 0 year, just pay the $100 something to the accountant to like just file the taxes. All right, even if you set up your LLC this year, it's May right now, and you operate for the next 6 months. Even if you make $10, file taxes on those $10. Right.
Got it.
So that's real important. Um, get a good accountant. So that goes hand in hand, right? If you have a good accountant, you're not going to not file taxes. First couple of years of our company and house, we didn't have an accountant. So we were doing the books ourselves. Once we got an accountant, we we're pretty much in good standing. So like find yourself a good accountant, especially in our industry where like royalties and revenue streams and payouts and splits, like someone who can like navigate that world is important. Someone who understands like the difference between, like, let's say you get an advance, right? An advance, even though it's income, it's really a debt. So you don't pay taxes on that, right? Because you got to pay that back. So there's like different things that, like, if you don't get a right accountant, you could like double pay taxes sometimes. So find yourself a really good accountant.
That understands the entertainment.
And then last but not least, treat it like a business. So I know, like, the funny thing is you set up the LLC, you get the EIN, you get the state certificate, you have an operating agreement, you have a website, but it still feels the same, right? Like it still just feels like you're an artist and you write and you sing and you perform and you just happen to have a business now. But when I say treat it like a business, it's like you and your business are not the same, right? You have to treat it almost like a separate person. It's a separate entity. So how you make money, how you spend money, how you transfer funds, like it's not your money. It's the business's money. Once you understand that and you grasp that, you'll make decisions for the business instead of making decisions for yourself. Because we're always going to spend whatever we have. But like learning how to be disciplined to say, "Oh, I just got $3,000 for a show." It's like, no. The business got $3,000 for a show. What do you get from that 3,000? That's what you got to start figuring out. So you don't say, "Oh, I got 3,000 for the show. Oh, let me go ride it. Like, let me go buy this thing. Let me go eat this." Like, it don't work like that. That $3,000 is for the business.
Hmm.
And it takes a lot of us a while to learn that separation between us and our business.
Because then you say like you have to pay yourself. You can't
Yep.
just be like, "Oh yeah, the money's coming in that account is mine too." Like, no, you should probably pay yourself. Maybe like you have 3,000, you can be nice. Give yourself 150.
Yeah, pay yourself, and then like, because again, don't forget you have to file taxes as an individual.
Yeah.
So when your business makes 3,000 and you pay yourself that 150, you get taxed on the 150. The business gets taxed 3,000 minus 150. And there's a balancing act you got to find, because let's say when you're ready to start buying a house, get cars, you got to show income as an individual. So if you never pay yourself and you put all your expenses on the business, when you go to buy a house, they'll say, "Well, you don't make any money." You say, no, my business makes $100,000 a month. It's like, yeah, but you don't make any money. So if you want to buy a house, that's where an accountant would say, "You know what, pay yourself like $7,000 a month. Even if you don't use it all, put half of it in savings towards the house, because when you go to buy a house, you need to show at least this much income."
Got it. Okay. So that's clearly where the accountant comes in, because as far as like knowing how much to pay yourself and knowing like taxes, because as someone working 9 to 5s and just having jobs, you know, I wasn't paying myself. I was getting paid and told where to go and what form I'm using, whether I'm a 1099 or I need a W-9 or I need this or I need that. Um, I would know like how I would be paying myself. So, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
get a good accountant. There are a lot of independent accountants out there now, a lot in our industry, who can help you kind of plan that out. Because in the beginning, when you're not making a lot of money and every dollar is being stretched, it's easy to say, "Oh, I only made $20 and I need that $20. I'm transferring 20." It gets a little harder when you start making $2,000 and then $8,000 and then 15. Like, at what point do you not just transfer all of it into your account? At what point do you treat it like a business? So the sooner the better. It's like even before you start making money, just having a plan for the money. Just be prepared for success. If things take off, if a song starts making money, if your tune core one day has an extra zero behind it, like just be prepared for that.
Be prepared for success.
Be prepared for success. I was not prepared for success my first go round.
I could tell by the way you're like, and that's the best thing. Like, experience is the greatest teacher, and to like get all of this knowledge from, unfortunately, you have to go through a situation where you're like, I mean, I really wish I knew this, or I wish somebody told me this, because I woke up and there was like extra couple zeros. Like, what am I supposed to do?
What do you do?
And it's really interesting because all of these hypotheticals that you're saying are things that you experience yourself. And so, and it is harder when you are really new and nobody knows the future, right? And there's a line between, okay, I'm trying to be realistic, but also like things happen and can happen overnight, especially in the industry. And especially knowing, if you know that you have the talent, you know you have the resources, and you know you're going to get where you're going to go, you know, why not prepare for that? It's just, it's always a battle, because it's hard to be like, oh, but how do I know that's going to happen and all of that stuff? And yeah, it's really, I mean, it's really difficult. It is like starting off, because you really don't know what the heck is happening. And that's why I am glad I decided to take this route and to do this, because I was in a situation where I was just saying yes and okay. And it was at my detriment at the end, because I left a situation not even knowing like anything about anything pertaining to my music. And I am not interested in walking this earth as an artist and not knowing anything about, you know, my personal success or what I'm doing or what my songs are doing. And that was the biggest push for me, was like, you know what, like, why do I not know this? I shouldn't, you know, some people are okay with sitting back and being clueless about things because it's not really as important to them. But knowing that I want to know, and you should know about these things, I definitely do think that the initial hard work, as far as, I mean, anything worth having is going to be work. But it's definitely worth it, because even right now, I'm able to understand some things and just have conversations about this that I would have never even thought twice about or even knew existed. And that's the danger of why so many artists are falling in a hole or are getting taken advantage of, because they don't have the resources and don't have the information. And what, I mean, what would you do if you didn't know anything? You wouldn't know better. But I mean, this is gold. So as intimidating as it is, because this is a 100% authentic process, because anybody that is watching this, you know, this is not a planned thing. It's not a act. I am a legitimate artist that is really trying to figure it out. And it's not, you know, it's not easy to admit that something is like scary, because it is. But it's like, that's the first thing. Like, if you're okay with admitting that this is something that's new, but you're open and receptive to learning the information, I think that that's the best thing that you can do for yourself. So thank you. Like, I mean,
amen.
I'm scared, but I'm excited.
Get to it. So now everybody gonna be watching. So now you got to go do it, because everybody in like 6 years, they're gonna be like, let me search and see if she actually did it.
Oh my gosh!
Now you gotta have a business. You better have a website or something.
They're gonna be like, so she was talking all that talk. What's she doing now?
Nah, like you said, it's intimidating, but once you do it and you see it's not. It's like getting a driver's license, right? Like, until you get a driver's license, you don't realize it's literally just a couple forms. You stand in line, you take a picture, and you get a card. But before you get your license, it's like I don't know, like, I got to take this test, and am I doing it right? And then it's like, so once you set up your business the first time, you'll be like, oh, really wasn't that painful? Like, I get it. And then by number 3, 4, 5, you'll be like, like, we've done it so much now that, like, well, Davina does it. I'm not gonna lie, I've done it probably once, but we've done it enough that, like, when we do have to set up a business, it's like the least of our worries. But when we were setting up our first one, I remember, like, we were literally terrified going into this building in DC. Like, man, do we have the right forms? Do we have the right this? We're like just not sure. And even after we got the form, we walked out with the folder with everything. It's still, again, and nothing changes. You're like, yo, is this it? Like, are we a business now? Like,
that is so like, I think honestly, the scariest part is this is not I mean, you could set it up and not do anything, but there's a huge level of responsibility in deciding to have a business and to manage all of this. If you're, unless you're balling and you can pay people to do things for you, you really gonna have to sit down and learn every aspect of things, because even then, if somebody is doing something for you, how do you know that they're doing it properly? How do you know that they're not taking advantage of you in some way? Or, so it's like, I think the scariest part is the after the papers. It's like I'm sitting here and I'm like, so now what? Like, I'm
I'm
like
gonna send you this deck. Go
nervous.
through it. You have my contact. Reach out if you ever worried. But like I said, Rocket Lawyer and LegalZoom, which they might have been around when we first started. I don't think they were. Like, I just feel like there's so many companies and so many online resources now that do most of the work for you that like you'll go to Rocket Lawyer, you'll set it up, and it literally is like, where do you need help? And it's gonna be like starting a business. And it'll say, okay, do you know what type of business? And then you'll look at this deck and say, oh, I need to set up an LLC. And it'll say, what state are you in? You'll say this state. And then it'll ask you some questions. You'll answer it. It'll tell you how much it costs. You'll say, I want an EIN as well. You'll say, I want an operating agreement template. It'll give you the total balance. You'll hit pay. And then your email is going to have a bunch of forms. And then you'll be like, wait, that's it? Like, I'm a business. Like that. It literally is just that.
Do you recommend, that's a good question. Do you recommend searching, what did you say? It was
Name check?
SBA.
SBA, like yourself?
Like, do you recommend, okay, so what I'm trying to say is, let's say I get everything set up. Great, cool. I have the name. And then it's like taken in places where I would want to like set up an Instagram or, well, Instagram,
So
that's
I'll
important.
show you right now.
Okay, great.
The process I would go through. So, all right. So let's say I wanted to create the company GLM. I don't know why it's doing it backwards. Music. All right, I'll just do that because that's what came up. So let's say I wanted this. I hit check. And this is namecheck.com.
Namecheck.com.
Yep. So it literally will tell me.
Oh my gosh. Wait.
Where it's available. So these are the domains. So domain.com.uk, all these are available.
Oh, they're available.
Yeah, all these are available. No, everything that's available is available. And social media name, Facebook is available. Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram are not available. Tumblr is available. Pinterest is available. YouTube and Flickr are not available. And then Apple and Google Play Store, it's available. So for this random batch of letters I put together, even that most random thing that I just put together isn't 100% available. But again, like to get around an Instagram and a Twitter, there's
you can make it
official or whatever it is you want to do. So like, right. So that was just a random search. And then you can like, I think through this company, you can actually pay them and they can buy everything for you, or you can just now say, oh, okay, this is available in enough places. Then you go individually to GoDaddy to get the domain name, to Instagram to get the handle, to Facebook to get the handle, and have that everywhere. So you can start there. Again, like when you go to register the actual company, it may not match the domain and the Instagram and the Facebook. Right? Like that's like 24/7 Artists Incorporated, which is our company, isn't the domain. The domain is 247 Artists. So it's like, and then it's spelled out 24/7 on Facebook because 247 wasn't available. So it was like we knew we wanted 24/7 Artists. We went and bought the domains, and then we kind of got the rest of everything as we needed to. and there was no 24/7 artist in Maryland. But again, if 247 the number wasn't available, I would have done the number 24 and spelt out 7. I would have done number 2 and spelt out 4. It's like I would have found some combination of what I wanted in LLC or in incorporation that would have made sense.
Okay, so when you're doing never mind. So if it's a corporation, it'll have incorporation at the end. If it's an LLC, it'll have LLC at the end.
Correct.
Okay. Do LLCs turn into corporations at any point?
They can. Again, once you get to a place where you are big enough and you're bringing on other investors, multiple investors at that, or multiple partners, then you would work with a lawyer, and you can go to Rocket Lawyer, or by this point you probably have a lawyer, and they would advise you. They'd say, based on the number of shares you have, based on the number of decision makers or partners or board members, you probably want to change over to an S corp for these reasons.
S corp, okay, that's what that is.
Or C corp, S corp, C corp. There's different types of corps.
So if you are doing like you say GoDaddy and you're talking about a website, right? And this is, you said there's no dumb questions.
There's no dumb questions.
So I've always wondered the difference between, because I've never set up a website. I know I need a website eventually. But as far as websites and emails go, so I see people that have something at youdogreat.com or youdogreat@gmail.com. Mm-hmm. So like the difference between the two, how does that work? Like what is
when you buy your domain, whatever your website name is, they will give you the option to set up an email. Pretty much every company that sells the domains gives you the option to also add email. And in Google for Business, the Google Business Gmail division also allows you, if you own a domain, to set up your business email through Gmail. So if you wanted, at youdogreat.com, if I own youdogreat.com, the domain name, www.youdogreat.com, if I buy it through GoDaddy for an extra $10 a month will allow me to create an email address. Or Google for Business will allow me to create up to 5 email addresses at that domain for $30 a month. And then we can share like a Google Drive under our business account. So the difference between having a Gmail is like, Gmail is just free, like Hotmail or Yahoo or AOL. But if you want a professional, quote unquote, email, then when you buy the domain, then you have the ability to create an email address. Again, if you do it through GoDaddy, you can pay them, you can pay Microsoft, you can pay Google, and there are other email companies that do that.
Okay.
Remind me if I don't, Davina is a partner with GoDaddy, so she can send you a link with like a bunch of information and like some discount codes to get all that stuff, like 1 year free and all kind of stuff.
Okay. Yeah. See, that's resources.
Yeah.
Yes, please. That would be great. Okay. Yeah. I just wanted to know the difference because, I don't really know if there's a certain industry standard, or, I know you can do whatever you want to do, but like, does it, because I personally like having a Gmail account for the simple fact of like having Google Drive, having things like that. And being able to just easily switch between the 7 other emails that I have. In my head, I'm thinking, okay, if I have at waterbottleentertainment.com, where am I checking my emails?
Yeah, so again, you can do it Gmail. Like when we had House at first, we were a Google business email. So it was youdo@housestudios.com. But I went to gmail.com to check my email, and it was in Gmail, and I had a Google Drive, and I had all the stuff, calendar, but the email was at housestudios.com. And then we switched over
per month.
We paid per month for every House Studios email. We had like 100 of them, and we paid like, I don't know, a couple $100 a month in emails. The reason I use Gmail now, even though I do have a professional Grayco and a professional 24/7 email, is when we left House Studios, when we sold the company, and I no longer had my email, it was a pain to switch over to something else. So now, even though I have professional emails, I'm just like, I don't know what the future of any of my companies are. I never want to be in a position where I got to switch emails again. So everyone emails me at Gmail now. Even if you email me through the professional emails, they forward to my Gmail because like I'm not doing that again. That was a pain, still a pain.
Got it. Okay.
But I wouldn't deter anybody from a professional email. I would just say be prepared for it. Just like I didn't do a good job of keeping my contacts. I didn't keep a good address book. So like if I'd done any of those things, it would have been easy because I just download my contacts and move them over. But I didn't do any of that. So when I moved from house and didn't have that email, I pretty much lost every email I'd ever had, ever, which is still hurts to this day because I had some gold in there. But it is what it is.
I'm hurting for you. No, so that was actually the perfect answer because that is what I'm really always thinking like, okay, in the future, if something were to happen, how would I recover from this or how would I prefer this to be? Because I like Gmail and because I know that regardless of what happens, I always still have that Gmail account. Then, like, is there a benefit of just having a professional email or just doing a Gmail?
Yeah. Again, some people, if you want to look for what house, we wanted to look professional at one point. So it's like, no, we got to have it. Now at this point, I'm like, if you ain't rocking with me because of gmail.com.
Yeah, like you don't email me. It's okay.
And I'm okay. Like I'm quite fine not working with you if you don't rock with the gmail.com I have.
Yes. Oh, perfect. Okay. So that makes sense. Fingers crossed that I'm gonna go on name check and see.
Name check's dope. And then just Rocket Lawyer, LegalZoom, whichever one you end up using. Let me know how you liked it. I'm sure we'll do more of these. So hopefully people see that next time we connect. You're a business and you have all your stuff set up.
I'll be like, hey guys, I got it.
And then once you do that, once you do it once, you'll be like, oh, okay, that wasn't that hard. And then you focus on the business. How do you make money with it?
And that's where we go into the next step of the journey. Now that I have my LLC, what's next?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. You're heading in the right direction.
This is a lot. Y'all, no, let me stop. No, this is great. I'm really excited. I think things get easier once you know. And the biggest reason why people procrastinate on things is they're not sure. There are things that, especially if I knew I could get done quickly or I knew how to do it, it's a matter of me just doing it. If it's something that I'm unsure about or I'm like, oh, I don't know, I'm procrastinating on it because in my head, I'm thinking of the process and I don't want to deal with that. So this definitely makes me more confident in going into this process because I know that the next step we shall see, we're going to talk about it. So, it's all a process. It's all a process. But thank you. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. And good luck.
Thanks. I will be updating you.
We look forward to it.